Hi, I'm Brian Johnson, and although you probably accidentally stumbled across it and have no idea why you're watching it, you are in fact watching The Dorkening.
Hello, this is Tom Kenny, voice actor, the voice of the Ice King on Adventure Time, and SpongeBob SquarePants. Meow. Oh, Gary the Snail, too. Hey, guess what you're filling your eye holes and ear holes with? The Dorkening! Oh, I love The Dorkening. Very popular in Ooh, and Bikini Bottom.
Hi, I'm Lou Ferrigno. You're watching The Dorkening. And you know what? You don't like me when I get angry, so don't get me angry. You better keep watching The Dorkening.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. You're watching The Dorkening. Stay tuned.
And here we are. We are now live on Splash Pages, the comic book club. And with us, my friend Rich. How's it going, sir?
Good evening. Good evening. How are you? Rich Davis, a.k.a. Velvet Joker, a.k.a. CT Joker. Saying hello to everyone out there. How you doing today, Leo?
Doing fine, my friend. Why don't you, tell people what you do? I mean, I've known you for a while at the cons and everything, but, for people new to the show, what do you do?
Absolutely. So I'm a 30-year cosplayer. Predominantly, I do the Joker. I'm known as CT Joker on Instagram. I just love the character. I love all different iterations of him. I've done at least 15 versions of him. I've done my own podcast before, the Clowns of Cosplay podcast, for a year with my good buddy Rebus Farser. And now here I am with Leo. We were doing the Splash Pages, and I'm excited. This is our second episode. We went DC first. Now we're going Marvel. And that's what's going on tonight, right?
Yeah. And tonight was a storyline that I've never read before. And actually, let me bring up the synopsis here. So tonight we're talking about X-Men Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past is a Marvel storyline. Shocker. It takes place in Uncanny X-Men issue 141 and 142. Only 2 issues. And it can be easily found via trade paperback. I got an Amazon link down below or up above, depending on where you're watching or listening to us. Clicking on that link does support the network, so I definitely highly recommend it. It's an Amazon link. And actually, it looks like a new trade paperback is up for pre-order coming out January 29th. So that link brings you right there. The story was written by the amazing Chris Claremont and John Byrne and penciled by John Byrne. Inked by Terry Austin, who is best known for working with John Byrne during his Uncanny X-Men run from 1977 to 1981. Chris Claremont is a writer for American comic books, best known for his 16-year stint on Uncanny X-Men, during which the series became one of comic book industry's most successful properties. John Byrne, his most famous works have been on Marvel's Uncanny X-Men as well, and also Fantastic Four, and the 1986 relaunch of DC's Superman franchise. During the 1990s, he produced a number of creator-owned works, including Next Men and Danger Unlimited. So talking about Days of Future Past, the storyline alternates between the present year of 1980 and the future year of 2013. In the future, Sentinels rule a dystopian United States, and mutants are hunted and placed in internment camps. Having conquered North America and hunted all mutants and other superhumans, the Sentinels are turning their attention to the rest of the world. On the eve of the feared nuclear holocaust, a few remaining X-Men, while making a desperate attempt to stop the Sentinels, send Kitty Pryde's mind backwards back to 1980 to possess the body of her younger self and prevent a pivotal event in mutant human history. And the cause of all these events, the assassination of Senator Robert Kelly. Along with Charles Xavier, Moira McTaggart and Mystique's newly resembled Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Working with the present-day X-Men, Kitty Pryde's future self succeeds in her mission, spoiler, and is pulled back to her own time, while her present-day self is returned with no memory of any interim. The world of 2013 is not shown again in the story arc. The present-day X-Men are left to ponder whether the future dystopia has been averted or simply delayed. There we go. That was a mouthful.
Yeah, that was a pretty good synopsis.
Well, thank you. It came from Marvel Fandom and Wikipedia. So
Right.
I did my research. Like I said, this was my first read here, and I really wasn't an X-Men kid growing up. I mean, I picked up the reboot and started with that, but never really followed through. Were you an X-Men fan growing up?
Yes, I am, and yes, I was. Yeah, I actually really grasped onto the X-Men probably during when they rebooted, when they went from old school X-Men, when it was just Cyclops, Beast, Marvel Girl, and Iceman, and when they started transitioning to was it Wolverine, Colossus, Cyclops, Banshee, Thunderbird, and Nightcrawler.
Yep.
And then Storm eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess she was actually a little bit of a later iteration. But yeah, this was a fun storyline, and it also inspired an X-Men movie.
It did, and that's where they rebooted the X-Men franchise, and it had, from my memories, it had some similarities, but there was a lot of stuff off.
Absolutely. Instead of sending Kitty Pryde back in the movie, they sent Wolverine back.
Yeah. Well, you have to, because I mean, Hugh Jackman, you know.
Yeah, well, he was the star.
Oh yeah, he still is. They got to bring him back somehow, because I don't see anybody else playing Wolverine.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about bringing Captain America back now too, Chris Evans.
Yeah.
So all kinds of things, but we're sidetracking a little bit.
We are. My apologies.
No worries. But yeah, Chris Claremont, a great writer. John Byrne, Connecticut artist. He also had a very classic Hulk run for many years, when Hulk first went intelligent.
Oh, Gray Hulk, right?
No, he was still a Green Hulk. They threw a parade for him in New York City because he was all celebrated now. Yeah, we're gonna have to look that up and get around to that, but that'll be another episode. But yeah, so great artists, great writers. The comic cover is very classic with all the deceased on them. I don't know if you can bring that up, Leo.
Yeah, actually, let me share my screen here.
Yeah, that right there on the right. And that's sort of, that's our first kind of look at Old Man Logan, because they hadn't even thought about that series at that point, and that's kind of the look that they ended up going with that. And I don't know if we could see who's actually deceased there, but there's quite a few.
Yeah, so it looks like Cyclops is slain, Colossus apprehended, Storm apprehended, Nightcrawler slain, Angel and Iceman are both dead. It says Beast is dead as well. Let's see. Actually, there is early on. You can see all the graves. And actually, I'll see if I can zoom in here. Yeah, so we get Ben Grimm. Charles Xavier, Scott Summers, Kurt Wagner, Reed Richards.
Right.
Yeah, Johnny Storm.
Yeah, because when Kate first goes back, one of the first people she sees is Nightcrawler, and she's like, "Oh, Kurt, you're alive!" Very emotional.
Yeah. So some people call this one of the best X-Men stories. Not being an X-Men fan, do you think this ranks up there as one of the best or the best?
It's certainly a classic story, and it's one of the first times that I can remember in comics when they were really going to like a future that really had impact on the past. It was the Sentinels was a great storyline, but I don't know that it was one of the best. It's up there. It's definitely emotional once you're tied into the characters, as you know. When they start killing, and there's a part in this where Aurora gets killed, and I grew up with that character, and it is a little emotional.
Yeah, it's towards the end. I mean, it's they wipe out literally everybody. Matter of fact, the next cover, this issue, everybody dies.
Yeah, they're trying to get you to buy that. They want you. This could be the end of your character.
Yeah. Matter of fact, the way Wolverine goes out is just crazy. Even Colossus. So Colossus is married to Kitty Pryde.
Right.
And then let's see. Let me find the page right here. Yeah, Wolverine gets blasted, and in the top left there, you can see just his skeleton remains.
Yeah.
Adamantium skeleton.
We all know he can come back from that, though.
Yes. Yeah. And he even came back from the molten adamantium, right?
Yeah, I was already out of comics by then, but I've read some stuff about it.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to get to it in splash pages here.
All caught up.
Yeah.
Blast from the future to the past.
Exactly. So the remaining X-Men is Kitty Pryde, Storm, Colossus, and Rachel Summers, Franklin Richards, and led by Magneto, which is crazy. And of all, Magneto is left to a chair.
Yeah, he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
A little irony there.
Exactly. And so the Sentinels, they've taken over the US. They've separated people into three groups. You have H for human, A for they have mutant genes, but they're not a mutant, so they could pass on those genes, and then M for straight out mutant. And in the movie, they were straight out killing mutants, where here they're tending to capture them and put them in camps, but obviously killing, quite a few of them.
Right. And with having like Rachel Summers there, that's, that I don't know that character was that integrated at that point, because she became the Phoenix for a while.
Oh, I did not know that.
But she was the Phoenix from the future, where also Bishop came from.
Okay. Yep.
He had the M over his eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bishop, he was introduced in the X-Men reboot with Jim Lee, right? Was that when they brought Bishop in, or?
I would have to check notes on that one.
Yeah. No idea. Okay. What other thoughts do you have for this issue?
Well, the art was great for its time. Obviously, things are updated now, but it was a very specific style. Very sad, like you said, a lot of death. It is emotional to see all your characters die, and for them to promote it blasting it out for you. All your characters are gonna die, and they do.
Yeah, I mean, for the viewers right now, Colossus Storm gets speared, and Colossus just goes crazy and knocks a Sentinel out of the building. But they don't show Colossus dying. But the one character does say that she feels him die, and that was the Summers kid, I think, Rachel Summers.
Right.
Yeah.
She has, psi powers, Professor X type powers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good read. It's a short read, obviously. It's just 2 issues. But it's good art. It's classic. It's definitely a classic story. It starts bringing into the Sentinels and the danger of the Sentinels. And we've seen in countless movies and in countless comics where that politician causes trouble for the X-Men and gets involved with, Sentinel formation and making the X-Men have to register with the government. And it's very oppressive.
Yeah, because he was covered in both the original 3-movie run and then the reboot as well, right?
Yeah.
Because, I remember Mystique took over his body at one point. He got mutated in the movies. Steven.
Yeah, right. In the original X-Men, that's right. And he sort of just turned to a blob of jelly, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
The very first one.
Yep. Steve says, who drew it? John Byrne? Yes. John Byrne's amazing artwork. And Rich, like you said, for the time, it was great artwork. And then the story is definitely great writing as well. So in my research, this was the first time where they interacted with their future selves. And it said that it has happened in X-Men storylines as well. So care to give a little glimpse from what you remember?
With them just going into the future and the past?
Yeah.
Well, Cyclops, Scott Summers, has a baby with a clone, and for his safety, they send him into the future, and then he comes back as Cable, who later goes on to lead X-Force.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and is in the Deadpool movie.
Yep. Yeah, that was... so is this the first time that we saw the straps around the neck that limited their mutant ability? Kind of like we saw in Deadpool 2.
Yeah, it might be.
Okay.
The power dampeners.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now I'm going to go back to some of the artwork here. So also in this, if you pick up the trade paperback, and actually, let me see if I can reset.
And also, just because I see her there, and while you're looking something up, this was really early on when Kitty was with the X-Men. This is like 2nd or 3rd issue that she's in this. So she is super new, and she is totally taken over by her older self.
Yeah, I read the previous issues to this just to, get a feel for it. And this was really, didn't really go on any missions. She was still going through training.
Exactly.
And actually, if you pick up the trade paperback, where is here we go. There is a issue previously, I think it's 138. And it's just Scott Summers just giving a whole rundown of like the X-Men.
His goodbye issue.
Yeah, his goodbye issue. Yeah.
Right. It's too much for him because Jean Grey has died again as the Phoenix.
Yeah, and it's funny, reading him go through it. Talking about how people died, but they didn't really die. Xavier lost his powers, but he was just faking it to test them. You definitely get a rundown. Like, I learned a lot of the X-Men history just from reading this. It's
oh yeah.
And then this was issue 138, so just a couple issues prior. But if you pick up the trade paperback, which I have the link in the show notes, I believe it comes with all those issues. So 138, even covering the King Size Annual number 4 from 1980. And this was another crazy thing. I mean, this takes place in 1980. They're talking about 2013 as a future.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. And now here we are there. It's, we're not in that kind of future decimated world, fortunately.
No. But I mean, talking about a president that's don't want to get political, but you see some parallels, from the overbearing president in the comic to
Sure.
what we've been going through. It's just
Absolutely
a little crazy to look at what people were thinking back then.
So what do you think? You think Chris Claremont was telling the future?
Could be just like Simpsons.
Yeah. They're pretty on board with those Simpsons, aren't they?
They are. And what I even liked, they covered the Wolverine's Wendigo fight when first fought
with Alpha Flight.
Yes.
Yeah. Love Alpha Flight. Classic Alpha Flight.
I never got into. I was more of a DC guy, but I really enjoyed this issue, and I'm really enjoying the writing. So I
could be wrong, but I think John Byrne might have done a run of Alpha Flight as well.
Really? Steve Bueller is asking, where other heroes disposed of? I think Banner was actually working with the government. I don't remember Banner being mentioned in this.
The heroes disposed of? Oh, in the future? Actually working with the government. Not in this storyline.
No, this year mainly focused on X-Men, and it covered some Fantastic Four because they need to get to the Baxter building, which the Sentinels have taken over, and that's sort of like the main control panel of all the everything that's going on. Oh, he says Alpha Flight.
Alpha Flight were the heroes. Yes, John Byrne did Alpha Flight.
Yep.
Confirming.
Okay.
There you go.
And just to give everybody a heads up, in the next half hour, we're going to be talking about Spectacular Spider-Man, Return of the Sin Eater. We're going to bring Chris on in a couple minutes here. And so where do you think we should go from here for X-Men? What do you think should be the next storyline that we talk about?
Do you want to do another X-Men?
Well, it might be good to continue. I mean, we can flip flop and next week do a DC, maybe do a Superman, but then flip flop maybe back to another X-Men, or you, sir, are the sensei of comics, so.
Well, I there was the time when I could look through all the long books, see a cover, and know exactly what the storyline is. But my memory is not what it used to be.
No, and that's a great thing about doing this. We're rekindling our love for comics. And we urge everybody to definitely read with us, and join the group, because we post what we're going to be talking about next in the group as well. So link should be in the show notes, but it's the Splash Pages Comic Book Club on Facebook. And there was a Superman, you know what, we'll talk about it afterwards, but there was a Superman run recently that a lot of people have been telling me to read. So
I always like the X-Men. There was the Brood storyline, and they were aliens that they could put eggs in your belly and produce more broods, kind of alien-ish. Yep. But it was a fun storyline, and I've always been a big fan of the Squadron Supreme, which is kind of a Justice League ripoff, but for Marvel.
Yep. Speaking of Marvel, also, we're going to be talking about House of M, but we're going to hold off a little bit because we don't want to possibly give any spoilers for WandaVision that's happening right now.
Right.
Yeah. Did you watch the first 2 episodes?
I did indeed. I thought it was fun. I like the old school throwback feel.
Yeah.
But from what I've read, from what I come to understand, every episode is going to be a different decade. And I like some of the clues. You know, the commercials, the Stark commercial, the what was the watch? The guy
Strucker. So
Strucker, right?
I've been watching. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I said the Hydra connection with Strucker.
Yeah. I've been watching some of the breakdown videos and I didn't catch it. So I've watched both episodes like 3 times so far. It's just crazy. Steve Bueller says, Brood, lots of tie-ins, ended quickly though. You know, in the group, we're also looking for recommendations as well. So anything you want us to cover.
Thank you for participation.
Exactly. In some of the breakdown videos, like the wallpaper in the second episode, you can actually see the castle that they were held captive with Strucker.
Oh, I did not see that. I did not watch it 3 times. I only watched it the one time.
And the commercial, you know, I didn't catch it on until after I saw the breakdown video. But so the Stark toaster and the beeping, that's supposed to represent the Stark bomb that landed in their home. That didn't go off. And then obviously Strucker is the guy that had them captive within the castle as well. And then he had the little Hydra logo on it.
I have a theory.
What's your theory? I'd love to hear it.
I have a theory that Vision is still dead. And that's just her powers manifesting him.
Yeah. I think you're right.
I mean, I haven't seen anything written up about that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just my theory.
Well, you know, they're talking where Doctor Strange is going to be possibly in this season, and obviously this is going to tie into Multiverse of Madness, right. And they need to bring mutants in at some point. You know, maybe some merge of the universes or something. Hopefully, we get Vision back.
Right. Well, we hear some kind of you know, Agatha Harkness and Mephisto, but we don't know who those characters are at this point in the show, or if they have or have not been revealed.
Well, Agatha Harkness and then Agnes. You think that's
is that the next door neighbor?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay.
And there's one thing she says, somebody says the devil's in the details, and she says that's not the only place he's at, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, so
referring to Mephisto.
Yep.
Right. And I think at one point during they show like a console, and you see the little sword logo.
Yes. Yep.
And I know. Now I'm not totally up on Sword. I sort of remember a few issues with Sword, but maybe when I got out is when they got more into it. But they seem like they're just the space version of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes, actually, Chris might be able to fill us in. We'll bring him in for a second, and so we're going to be going to commercial. And where do you like people following you?
Okay, you can see me on Facebook. I'm Rich Davis. Instagram, CT Joker 2014. Those are the 2 places you can find me.
Okay. And we have those links in the show notes as well. And for me, just Google Leo Pond. You find a bunch of stuff. Could be true, could be not, but I'm not going to say which is which. But I run a little network called the Dorkening Podcast Network, which you can find just about 30 shows on a network, which is absolutely insane. A lot of awesome stuff, including splash pages, and also the including Chris's new Spider-Man show, which we're going to be getting into next. And if you're listening to the Audible show, just head on over to our website and you'll find more information on Chris's show. And with that, I'm going to bring up Deadly Grounds. They're a sponsor of the network and absolutely love them. You know, they definitely help keep the lights on. And, you know, little mom and pops here in Connecticut make the best coffee you'll ever have. But here's a zombie talking about coffee.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
And Deadly Grounds information us down below or up above, depending on where you're watching or listening to us. We have Chris. What's going on, my friend?
Hi.
Hi, were you listening in?
Hey, Chris.
Yes, part of it.
We were talking about Sword, and we're not too caught up on Sword, talking about WandaVision. What are your thoughts before we get talking about Spider-Man?
I was kind of bored with the first 2 episodes, but I mean, it was just that type of television show I have never been really into. So I knew right from the beginning I wasn't going to be entirely on board, but I mean, the Sword connection was interesting. I know it's going to be a slow pace getting to the big reveal of, the whatever the problem of the episode is going to be, the giant plot line. So I'm here for it. I'm excited. Otherwise, I don't really have much of an opinion. I mean, it was a very like, oh, there's something going on, but we knew that ahead of time. The Sword reveal, but otherwise it's 30 minutes of a classic television show from the 50s, and that's it. One thing I didn't quite understand, everyone was like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing since Civil War or Infinity War. I'm like,
oh, it's the only thing they've had in a year and a half.
It's 30 minutes of a 50s parody of a 50s sitcom. I mean, it didn't move and shake me like something we haven't seen before. I'm sorry, it wasn't Infinity War or Endgame. It wasn't,
No, it definitely wasn't. But, I know a lot of people are starved for, new Marvel content. But, for, some old timers like, me and Rich, like hearing that Dick Van Dyke actually consulted on the first episode, it's really having that feel of a 60s sitcom was definitely was refreshing. I don't know if you find it that way, Rich.
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand what Chris is saying 100%, but we knew going in this wasn't going to be a pow zap wappo type of show. It wasn't going to be an action thing. They were going for comedy, and they're trying to still tie it into the MCU. So I'm intrigued enough to see what they're going to do with it. The Easter eggs were fun for sure, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they released the budget this week. Also, I think $255 million
for the whole season.
For the whole season, and
okay. I thought you were going to tell me for one episode. I was like, are you serious? Holy crap.
And
do we even know how many episodes are going to be?
9.
Okay, 9.
Yes, we got 2 more coming out. We either have 1 or 2 more coming out this week. I mean, they could be doing 1 episode at a time after the first 2. Who knows? We'll find out, obviously, in 2 days. So,
yeah.
Do you want to get to Return of the Sin Eater?
Yeah, totally.
Return of the Sin Eater.
We need an introduction. We need a proper introduction for the show.
Yeah, we definitely need to come up with one. And do you have like a intro music that you put together yet?
No, because you said we couldn't use the music I wanted.
You probably could. It's
we could sing it. Spider-Man.
No. Okay.
Well, I mean, for the live broadcast we couldn't, but for the podcast we definitely could.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe for the pod, yeah, because this is on Facebook, and Facebook has problems now with music and stuff like that. So
yeah, Facebook and YouTube. I've had streams actually shut off like mid-stream.
They're having mommy and daddy are having a little bit of a tiff, and they're having a divorce, and they need to suck it up and get over it because Big Daddy's leaving the house soon. So. Yeah, I went there. Sorry, that's a lot what it's connected to. So anyway, yeah. So we're going to do the Spectacular Spider-Man issues 134, 35, 36. As I said previously, we are only going to do 1 issue per episode, but I wanted to kick the podcast off immediately with big story arcs to kind of get going. Previously, we did the Sin Eater storyline. We're going to do the return of the Sin Eater storyline. And I believe Leo has the plot synopsis for us.
I do. Okay, so we're going to be talking about Spectacular Spider-Man Sin Eater released, spanning from issue 134 through 136, as Chris said, Found in a trade, The Murder of Jean DeWolff. It can be easily found via trade paperback on Amazon. I got a link down below. The link does support the network via Amazon Associates, and it does cover the full storyline. So it covers the issues from last week and the ones we're talking about this week as well. So it's written by Peter David and with the art by the awesome Sal Buscema. Peter David is known for his award-winning 12-year run on The Incredible Hulk, penciled by Rich Buckler, better known for his work on Fantastic Four and creating the character Deathlock. Inked by, actually, I think I have the wrong information.
Oh, it's inked by Vince Coletta, lettering by Rick Parker, Bob Sharon, colorist Jim Solarup, editor, and Tom DeFalco as editor-in-chief.
Yes.
Okay, so I think you got the credits from the Sin Eater storyline.
Yep. That's what I did.
Okay. And this is the last story that Peter David will write, because this is where he gets fired, because they're like, you're too high profile to write comic books.
So the storyline, informally known as Return of the Sin Eater, explores the origin of the Sin Eater and his attempted rehabilitation. Set approximately 1 year after the death of Jean DeWolff, the sequel reveals after his arrest, Carter was put in psychological and medical care. S.H.I.E.L.D. purged all the drugs from his system, but Carter still had visions of the Sin Eater persona, as well as being unable to walk or talk properly. After his release, Carter has trouble readjusting to society and is haunted by visions of the Sin Eater, as well as having to deal with continuing public outrage over his crimes, finally succumbing to his madness. Carter puts on a Sin Eater costume, takes an unloaded gun, and goads the police into opening fire on him. Peter David described the conclusion of the storyline as dramatic, tragic, and perhaps merciful ending of Stan Carter.
Also, just some interesting Spider-related news just before we begin. It was just announced across the boards that Venom number 200, the end of the current King and Black Null, symbiote god storyline, Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman are leaving the title.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So big Spider-Man news just kind of broke just before the podcast started.
Wow.
Leo did a very quick plot synopsis for these 3 issues, but like I said, in the future, we'll be doing one 22-page comic book unless there's something that we have to do with it to keep the pace down for the episode. In the first issue's cover, we have the Sin Eater, a guy in shadow, and Spider-Man kind of badly burnt, which is revealed, of course, to be Electro on the second page. The second issue, Electro is on the cover trying to fry Spider-Man, being like, I did it! I've beaten Spider-Man because I'm such a loser character! And then the third issue has the Sin Eater holding a gun to a child, which we will get into that at the end of the second issue's run-through. Real quick, want to point out, Electro never appears in his costume in the second issue. He appears in his costume in the third issue, but for some reason they drew him on the cover in his costume on the second issue because, well, his costume is recognizable and nobody knows who he is in his civvies.
Yeah, and you got to sell comics,
Yeah, you got to sell comic books. They are still, by the way, doing in the upper left-hand corner of the box the half Spider-Man, half Peter Parker, because the title had just changed to just the Spectacular Spider-Man. They just dropped the Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, which had been on the title head for years.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. Beginning of the issue, we have Sin Eater talking to himself. Now, when I read this as a child, I had no idea what the heck was going on with the guy talking to himself in the ski mask and like the psychiatrist outside and his trying to talk about like, how Stan Carter is this a victim of this drug experiment done by S.H.I.E.L.D., as they call a spy outfit. Now, at the time, S.H.I.E.L.D. was still a secret spy organization. It was only known to the superhero community, but the public at large really didn't have a lot of knowledge of S.H.I.E.L.D. So that's why they call it what it is in the book. They do go over the death of Sin Eater's victims, and Sin Eater is let go to go home because of temporary insanity due to the drugs. Now, this brings up a great question of, should we let criminals who murdered 3 people go due to temporary insanity?
Well, even that, just 1 year after the events, that's
not a lot of time.
No.
Yeah, not a lot of time. We switch over, of course, to Mary Jane setting up a camera to take some sexy photos for Peter because she thinks Peter needs to get out of the taking pictures of himself as Spider-Man business and get into taking sexy pictures of his wife business, which is one of my favorite moments ever for the couple. Is Peter is crawling on the walls and she says these pictures are going to drive him right up the wall. And without her looking, Peter snatches her up for some serious sexy makeout time that you would never see in a Disney comic book today.
No. Nope.
You might see Mary Jane in a bikini because she was in her own series. She is a model, so she does have modeling photos appear in Marvel Comics sometimes. But this type of sex has been very toned down in Marvel comic books.
Well,
Why? Because Disney is prudes and we can still show the Punisher shooting people, but we can't show a couple having sex.
Sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
No, I just said no boobies.
No boobies. Then we switch over to Max Dillon, who's moping about, oh, my life sucks because every time I put on a costume, I'm a crappy written villain, and all I have is electricity powers. And that's when Peter and Mary Jane are passing by, I guess, in the other direction or somewhere else in the city, and he sees the news headline about the Sin Eater crushing a pipe, scaring Mary Jane that this guy is actually getting to Peter, despite all the villains that she's aware of him having fought. And just keep in mind, he's still in the black and white thread costume because these 3 issues and the next one take place leading up to the first appearance of Venom. So Venom has not broken into him and Mary Jane's Peter and Mary Jane's apartment yet and terrified him. When that happens, we'll get there. But throughout the 3 issues, there's talk of Peter and Mary Jane moving, and that is happening in the other Spider-Man titles because Mary Jane is becoming a huge soap opera star and supermodel that her and Peter. She doesn't want to live in Peter's crappy apartment anymore that he's been living in forever. In fact, over in A Web of Spider-Man, we actually get to see the going away party of the tenants in Peter's apartment that have been characters in his books for a number of years, giving him and Mary Jane a going away party from the building, including Mrs. Muggles, who was his nasty, crotchety old landlord he was always late with the rent with. They move into like the greatest penthouse, gorgeous looking apartment in New York in Amazing Spider-Man number 300 eventually.
Let's not bring up issue 300.
We're gonna have to because there's a jarring transition of the costumes from one issue to the next.
I know it's still painful because
so Peter decides to go and investigate Stan Carter and finds out he has a goddamn PR man, and Stan's like, hi, Spider-Man. Oh, let me get you some coffee. And Spider-Man's, geez, Carter, who did this to you? Did this happen in prison? And he's like, no, you did. You broke, what does he say? He says, you broke my clavicle, my jaw, my inner ear. I'm a wreck, but I deserved it. Do you want some coffee? And Spider-Man flips out.
Yeah, what he says, no, keep away from me, and leaps out the window.
And the Sin Eater's ghost is right there being like, ha 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 ha, what a loser. And Stan's like, no, he's not the monster, you are. Oh my god, the people I killed. I've never met anybody who's murdered somebody in cold blood. I've met soldiers who that was part of their job, and police officers as that is part of their job sometimes, unfortunately, in self-defense. But I've never met anyone who is viciously killed somebody before. I have read documentaries and watched documentaries, and I'm currently watching Nightcrawler right now on Netflix, which is amazing. But I think Peter David, just because he's an amazing writer, and I met Peter David at That's Entertainment years ago. He signed some Hulk books for me. Really captures what it's like to be a guy who murdered somebody, and the PTSD that affects them behind it.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Spider-Man gets into a fight with Electro, and Electro kicks his ass because he pulls his punches after what happened to Stan Carter and learning how aggressive he can become with his powers. He decides to give, Electro what he calls a love tap, and he gets his ass handed to him in front of everybody.
Well, also, and I don't know if this is canon or not, he says he sucks in all the static electricity. So he believes that's how Spider-Man clings to the walls. But is that canon? Is that
That's as much canon as like Superman being able to fly someone within in his arms with them, and the aura of Superman protects them from like getting their flesh ripped off their skull while he's flying through the air. I mean, seriously, I know he probably flies at a very small, steady pace for Lois to fly with him, when they're flying to the fortress to have a romantic dinner or something, or wherever he flies with people. But again, that's as much in canon as like the microscopic itty bitty tiny hairs on his hands are actually what's making him crawl.
Oh, like in the movie, yeah.
Like in the movie, which a lot of people thought was the Spider-Man 2099 power. But it's like, no, those are talons coming out of Miguel O'Hara's fingers to rip the flesh off of somebody. What Sam Raimi was showing us in the Spider-Man movie was that spiders have on their legs itty bitty tiny microscopic little hairs that allow them to, grip up the walls. A lot of bugs have this because it's not just, if you know the origin of Spider-Man, it wasn't a spider that Stan Lee was looking at, it was a fly. But Flyman sounded dumb.
Just a little bit.
Also, there was a character called the Fly created by Archie Comics, so that might have been another reason why he decided not to call Spider-Man the Fly. In the second issue, Stan Carter shows up with a toy gun against the crowd, and Spider-Man's like, "You are not helping, man. Showing up here, everyone knows you're the frickin' Sin Eater released from prison, and you got a toy gun pointed at them." And Stan's just trying to save Spider-Man's life from being beaten up by this crowd who's just like, "Oh yeah, it's Spider-Man, let's get him because we all gonna beat down on Spider-Man." And I love how there's one woman who's like, "You didn't do anything. Why are you gonna beat up on Spider-Man?"
Well, it's good that there's, at least one sensible voice in the crowd, but obviously J. Jonah Jameson got to the heads of everybody else. Because
what was that?
Because Spider-Man's a menace.
Yes, we get there in the next issue. By the way, the front page of the Daily Bugle, we have a great article. Peter returns to his apartment, and Mary Jane points out he looks like a burnt-up lobster. Carter gets out of jail because his PR person shows up saying, "Book my client or let him go." And Spider-Man starts having all sorts of nightmares about the Sin Eater and Electro. Stan tries to get a job, can't get a job. He ends up taking his PR agent's offer up on appearing on TV. And while he's appearing on TV, there seems to be a model show happening prior to or after the Sin Eater interview because Mary Jane is there. And Electro's watching the TV and saying, "Hey, maybe I can go down to the TV station and pick up on that girl," while Spider-Man swings in from the audience to lay in the stand once again. And Mary Jane's like, "Jesus Christ, Peter, you are not helping yourself."
Just real quick, Angela Deacon, I'm off. It's almost 2 a.m. Thanks for a great show as usual. She's over in the UK. Thanks for watching, Angela. And Steve Bueller has been making some good comments in the chat room as well. I just wanted to also make a note that who is the host of the show? It was Regis.
Is it Regis?
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. The late great Regis Philbin.
Yep. I don't know if they were. I mean, obviously it's Regis Philbin, but they don't say his last name.
Regis is dead, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Electro decides to pick a fight with Spider-Man, but Spider-Man's about to punch him, and Electro's like, "You're a wimp," spits at him with his electric spittle, sizzles on the floor, and walks away in laughter, knowing he humiliated Spider-Man on national TV, and that's a good enough defeat for him.
That's a new one.
If you look at the Spectacular Spider-Man, the upcoming next issue, Spider-Man versus Electro, Stan Carter versus Sin Eater to the finish, need we say more? The caption says, "Buy this next issue or I'll shoot this kid." It's on the letters page, Leo, which you probably don't have.
No, this is from the trade paperback.
Okay, yeah. So there is a image of the next issue, and Sin Eater is saying, "Buy the next issue or I'll shoot this kid." You would never get away with that in a comic book today.
Oh, no.
Not with all the gun violence, not with all the school shootings, which, yes, thank God. Everyone can, say one good thing about 2020, the number of mass shootings was down to, I don't know what the number was, but it was significantly decreased.
Yeah.
So there's some good stuff about 2020 right there.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
We can't stop a virus, but we can stop gun violence a little bit with a pandemic. So let's look at something bright. So right on the front page, as you have it up on the still story, Leo, for anyone listening to this as a podcast, it's the first page of the third and final part of our story. It says Spider-Man Coward, and it's dated Tuesday, December 15th, 1987. So 10 days till Christmas. 30 cents for a copy of the Daily Bugle, which I remember at a time newspapers in 1987 were actually 20 cents. So maybe this is a special edition because it's J. Jonah Jameson and he's a skinflint from money and gonna milk every dime he can.
Yeah, I take that excuse.
They actually wrote a cohesive article in here that you can read. Viewers of the local morning show on WABC TV were shocked yesterday by the unexpected appearance of Spider-Man and his subsequent inaction against a direct challenge from the criminal known as Electro. Electro's taunting challenge came mere days after his early defeat. Spider-Man, Max Dillon had robbed a jewelry store. And then there's another article that says, I knew it all the time, an editorial by J. Jonah Jameson, see page 36. For anyone who's a current fan of Spider-Man, J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man video games and currently in the comic books runs a podcast radio station. And in the comic books, he actually knows Spider-Man is Peter Parker.
Oh, that's current?
Yes, that is current. In fact, he knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and it's come back to bite him in the ass only one time when he got kidnapped by the Crimson Goblin, the Carnage / Green Goblin Norman Osborn, and Norman tortured it out of him, the identity of Spider-Man, and he gave it up.
How did he find it out?
How did who find it out?
How did J. Jonah Jameson find it out?
Peter told him.
Just for no reason?
No, you got to go read the Spectacular Spider-Man.
All right.
It happened in Spectacular Spider-Man volume 3.
Volume 3.
So, and that story is still ongoing as of right now. Jameson does know Peter is Spider-Man. In fact, he writes pro editorials about Spider-Man now. He's like in Spider-Man's corner to a degree. He continues to criticize Spider-Man, but always trying to give him good advice, saying, Spider-Man never listens to my advice. He should listen to my advice. My advice is great. By the way, once upon a time, Peter and Jameson were related because Jameson's father married Aunt May.
Wow.
That happened in Amazing Spider-Man number 600. J. Jonah Jameson Sr. has since been killed off. So Aunt May is the worst person to marry or date in the Marvel Universe because Uncle Ben was shot. Nathan Lebinsky was killed by the Vulture, and J. Jonah Jameson Sr. Died due to Ben Reilly's spider clone Jackal nonsense.
Very confusing.
So never ever date Aunt May. And by the way, in the Spectacular Spider-Man annuals, it was revealed she was once engaged to a mobster.
And she dated Otto Octavius for a while.
She dated Otto Octavius for like one time, and they almost got married. It wasn't like for a while. It was like a quick little like, I need the power plant you've inherited, so let's get married. Turning over into the issue real quick, just to get through it real fast, Spider-Man and Mary Jane are packing up their apartment. As I mentioned before, they're going to move into a luxury penthouse because Mary Jane is a super-duper model and an actress on a high-profile soap opera. Secret Hospital, I think, is the name of the soap opera she's going to become a big character on, which she has once in a while returned to, kind of like every other soap opera. You know, characters come in and out of it. I don't know the age of Mary Jane at the time of this comic book. I gotta assume currently she's about 25 in the comic books, just like Spider-Man is revealed to have been 25 recently. So go figure how old they are here. They have just gotten married, by the way. This is right after Spider-Man crawled his way out of a grave that he was put into by Kraven the Hunter. So Spider-Man and Mary Jane have been married for possibly about a few months. You gotta love the scene right here that Stan is talking to the Sin Eater and going over his life story by candlelight with that tape recorder, and the Sin Eater is holding the dead body of Gene DeWolff, and the absolute amazing artwork by Sal, like, no, and he throws the tape recorder, just makes me love this entire run so much, because that type of drama storytelling and artwork really captivates the hell out of me. And we see a lot of that here.
Yeah, even the look on Gene Wolfe's face with the blank white eyes and the mouth.
Yeah, and she was in the 90 that she was to be killed in. Now, the Sin Eater recently came back in the comic books due to Harry Osborn, aka Kindred. And he came back with like a magic gun, and he basically was cleansing people of their sins. And he cleansed and absorbing their powers as well. And he did this to the Juggernaut. He became the Juggernaut Sin Eater. And Morlun, who is the energy-sucking vampire that Spider-Man fights once in a while, part of the Spider-Verse storyline in the comics. And he recently cleansed the sins of Norman Osborn. And Norman Osborn is now, I guess, a good guy, but he's still kind of a jackass.
So is it Stan that came back, or is it just the Sin Eater?
The Sin Eater is a figment of his imagination.
Okay.
He's crazy. And at the end of the storyline, he thinks he's trying to kill the Sin Eater the only way possible by having the police kill him. It's the only way to make the ghost of the Sin Eater actually truly dead is while Spider-Man is fighting Electro and finally getting, the comeuppance on Electro, Stan decides to go out there and take a kid hostage with an unloaded gun and allow the police to murder him in order to finally put the Sin Eater to rest. However, because he's a murderer, he goes to hell, and while he's in hell at some point in the next, whatever many years between 1987 and 2020, Harry Osborn died and went to hell, came back as the Demon Kindred, and brought Sin Eater back up from hell with him.
Gotcha.
Which is a long, long effing story I'm not going to get into. We'll get to the death of Harry Osborn in issue 200 when we get there.
Now, I just wanted to bring up, and I found this fascinating, was, just a look back of the 80s. Mary Jane references Rocky 3, and that's her advice to Peter to get back into his groove. Like, he's lost his mojo,
Yeah, he got humiliated by Electro twice.
Yeah. And she references Rocky 3, saying, you should take some licks and then let your instincts kick in.
It's a tragic end. It's a tragic end to Stan because Spider-Man gets that giant pow and knocks Electro out, which is fantastic. But at the same time, the Sin Eater is just gunned down, and that's it. That is the end of Stan Carter until a storyline in Venom, which called Sinners Take All, which was the first appearance of the She-Venom we saw in the Venom movie. But that's a whole story for another time.
Wait, there was a She-Venom in the Venom movie?
Did you see Venom? The movie?
I blocked out some of it.
Okay, don't worry about it. We won't cover it again because it will never come up during the time that we're covering this podcast.
But now I need to watch it.
It says next, don't miss the pulsating return of one of Spider-Man's deadliest foes, the Tarantula. And we'll get into who the Tarantula is. And actually, the Tarantula was on the cover of Spectacular Spider-Man #1, the original Tarantula. This is Tarantula 2, and we'll get into that in the next podcast. But what did you guys think of the return of the Sin Eater and the beginning of Sal's tenure on the title?
Well, death by cop, man, that's pretty dark.
That is very dark, considering the death by police today is constantly in the news, and will be in the news again at some point. We got the election the inauguration happening right now, but I guarantee we're going to have another story of cops. But the cops in this story are justified to kill the Sin Eater. He has a gun trained on a kid. They don't know it's loaded. And once the kid's gone and the Sin Eater looks like he's about to shoot the police gun him down. Of course, the guy leading it, the hippie cop, and man, they couldn't draw more of a hippie-looking cop if they tried, right?
Yeah.
He looked like something from a bad 70s cop show.
Yeah, but that was definitely the hairstyle of the '80s, the long hair. I admit.
I have a friend on the police force in Massachusetts, a very good cop, a very good man. He's been on one of my podcasts before, and we went over all the typical cop, tropes from a TV show that we were covering, and he broke down how it doesn't work whatsoever, and then talked about what does work and what is real.
Well, yeah, he's sporting the long hair, and then you have the long mustache that goes down the sides, and
it's just so ridiculous. I've met a few detectives, and I've seen most cops today. They have to keep a very military style to their hair, men and women.
What other thoughts did you have, Rich?
And then don't they say at the end, he says, I'm sorry, what is the agent's name? Alex?
The cop?
No, the agent, the guy who is the Sin Eater. What is his name?
Stan Carter.
Stan Carter. Where they go, Stan Carter finally, because the gun wasn't loaded, so he says, I finally got him, one over on the Sin Eater, something to that effect.
Yeah.
He says, I've won. Sin Eater's dead. Now I can live.
I do love the fact that the covers have the part 1, 2, and 3 in different colors right below the Spider-Man title in the exact same position per issue. That's pretty nice. Little details like that are pretty cool. And I love this era of comic books where it wasn't like a movie poster for every effing cover. Didn't need to be like a piece of artwork to frame. They broke, the third wall with like the Sin Eater addressing the audience in a way, or he's addressing Spider-Man who's looking at him. They did that a lot until the 2000s where and then every cover was like this gawky image of Spider-Man doing something that wasn't unrelated to the actual book itself. They've sometimes gone back to that, and yes, the covers do reflect what's going on in the comic book, but I've always appreciated comic books having covers that are actually about what's going on in the issue. I understand that variant covers are big deals these days. Like, they're going to have, a Mary Jane month. So every freaking Marvel comic book title will have Mary Jane on the cover, even if she has nothing to do with the characters within it. That's fine if that's what you want to collect, but I appreciate when the cover has something to do with the actual story. And this era of Spider-Man, up until the, right around 9/11, let's just say, the covers had something to do with the interior of the comic book.
I have a nitpick though, because on 136, he didn't use a spider signal in the.
No, he didn't. You're right. In fact, the costume didn't have a spider signal, I think.
Yeah.
That's a scary cover. Scary cover, though.
Definitely. Absolutely. It's definitely right up there. Just as a quick time capsule, and this will be a little rushed, but it'll be easier with one singular issue. We'll go through some of the quick ads in here, like the M&M Quartz watch ad. You could order a quartz watch from M&M. I thought that was pretty funny. Also in the issue, Marvel did these bullpen bulletins, and it would take forever to read through them. But they also have a checklist and a spotlight on somebody that currently works on Marvel. And this happens to be a woman that works at Marvel in the first issue, the one that's up here right now, Ann Nocenti. She's the editor on X-Men, New Mutants, and Classic X-Men. I'm unaware of who this person is, but I hope she's still around in the comic book industry today.
I've heard the name, but...
And also unusual to see a woman as an editor at Marvel. I mean, the Marvel and DC at the time were pretty heavily, male. There was very few women working in comics, as there still are today, but a lot less so.
What issue are you looking at?
The one that you have up right now.
134. I'm going to try to bring up the individual issue to see if I get the
other comic books that were actually being published around this time. Web of Spider-Man number 36, West Coast Avengers number 30, Daredevil number 252, Captain America 339, Amazing Spider-Man 298. That's part 1 of the 3-part. That Spider-Man story is really cool. That crossed over all the different books. Leo has up on the Facebook page right now the live video. If you're listening to this as a podcast, you can't really see it, but it's the I Am the Spider storyline. It's where Peter is investigating somebody that was wrongfully imprisoned in an insane asylum, and he goes undercover and gets captured himself and starts ranting that he is Spider-Man, so they lock him up. The Mad Dog Ward storyline would actually come back in the adjective-less Spider-Man book. But what other book was out being published? Oh, so as I was saying, Amazing Spider-Man number 298, that's the beginning of the Chance storyline and the beginning introduction of Venom.
Oh, okay.
So every page at the end of the issue would have Venom appear. So Venom would show up in little pieces, and then, the big, full page spread, Mary Jane comes home and sees Peter standing in the darkness, and she's like, Peter, why are you breathing so heavy? And this mouth forms out of the blackness with the tongue and the teeth, and all he says is, hi, honey, I'm home.
Which issue was that again?
299.
Oh, okay. 299. Yeah.
And then Peter comes home in issue 300, and Mary Jane is crying in the corner, and she's screaming to get away, and he takes off his mask. He's like, it's me, honey, it's Peter. And she's like, oh my God, Peter, it was you, but it wasn't you. He was huge, and he had a costume with a mouth, and I don't understand. Can we please not stay here tonight? And they go to a hotel, and that's when Peter realizes it's got to be the black costume. Somebody found it. And then at the end of the issue, she's like, I need you to do me a huge favor. This is all over, and I'm glad the Fantastic Four have Venom and captured, but you have got to take that costume off and swear to me you will never wear that costume ever again. And he's like, okay, sure. I love you, honey, but it's going to be kind of funny flying around as Spider-Man in my underoos. And she's like, well, I found this, and it's his costume he bought at a German costume shop in Spider-Man versus Wolverine, and she alters it slightly to fit him a little better, and he goes swinging out as Spider-Man in the red and blues again.
Oh, nice.
The reason why he's wearing the black costume, by the way, in a lot of these issues is he was in a bomb, and his last red and blue costume got blown the hell up. And the Black Cat sewed all his costumes for him, and they were all the black and white costume because she liked him in the black and white. So that's why all his costumes are black and white, because he was dating Felicia Hardy at the time, and she likes her spider in the black and white.
What were you
ever played the Out of the Shadows Spider-Man video game where there's a symbiote invasion and it guest stars like Luke Cage and Wolverine? You have two different choices you can make in that. You can embrace the symbiote and go off and bang, let Mary Jane die and go off and bang the Black Cat and basically become Venom, or you can reject the symbiote and stop the invasion and save Mary Jane.
Which game was that?
Spider-Man Out of the Shadows or something like that.
What system was that for?
Every major console.
No, I mean what era? Like PS2,
PS3? The PS3, Xbox 360.
Okay.
And it was okay. And by that, I mean the voice actor who played Spider-Man was one of the worst voice actors to voice Spider-Man ever. But the idea behind it, that you could make this choice and embrace the symbiote and let your wife die to go off with the Black Cat.
Yeah, that's messed up.
That is messed up. Just wanted to go over a couple of the other really interesting ads in here. We also had Dragonlance, if anyone ever remembers that game. And there was an ad for Marvel Superheroes role-playing games, Nightmares of Future Past and Marvel Superheroes Advanced Set.
Now, was that Dragonlance the PC game or the actual D&D game?
The actual D&D game.
Okay.
And then there was also an ad in here for Captain Power and the Soldiers of Fortune. If you remember that, it was a toy you pointed at the screen, and then it was used that light technology like the zapper from Nintendo would use.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. And then you could also, by the way, get how about this? How about a 9-issue subscription to your favorite Marvel comic book for $5? How many comic books get you for $5 today? One.
No, not even one sometimes.
Oh my God. I swear to God, we're going to come to a time, and there's many more ads in these issues, people, but we're crammed for time, and we go over them a little bit more in detail in the next podcast where we're covering one single issue at a time. But this really brings me back to when I started getting into comic books. I was about 7 or 8 years old. I was in a Walden Books, if you remember those, the bookstores inside the mall. And there was one in Wonder Woman, by the way. Wonder Woman 84 had a Walden Books in the background. And there were 2 comic books I bought, and they were the first 2 comic books I ever actually bought with money. I had a comic book given to me. It was an issue of Amazing Spider-Man with Hammerhead and Doc Ock in it. But the 2 comic books I first bought ever in my life was an issue of Alf and an issue of Transformers, which had Fortress Maximus fighting Scorponok on the cover. And I was only familiar with the cartoon at the time, so I had no idea what was going on in that comic book. They had a lot of concepts in that Transformer book that if you were only a fan of the cartoon and you picked up a random issue, you were like, what is going on?
Yeah, some of those old Transformers comics were kind of messed up.
I mean, sometimes you had the Transformers with teeth, and Galvatron like bit into a robot's arm and ripped the wiring out of somebody once.
Vicious.
It was insanely violent, but they were robots, so who the frick cared? I mean, there was an issue where Ratchet and Megatron were blown up, and several issues later they came back as this Amaglam monster mash, and Optimus Prime was like told by his troops, you have got to kill that thing. And Optimus is like, no, it's Ratchet. He's like one of my oldest friends. And Cup hands him a blaster and says, you're the only one who can do it, Optimus. You have to put that monster down. And Optimus holds the gun to his head. And he's like, I can't do it. And Ratchet just picks the gun up out of his hand, shaking like, kill me, kill me.
So one thing that's a little disappointing is the issues I have, they do not have the ads.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, we'll it's just really like a time capsule look at the time period to see what's going on. You know, like there's a Nintendo ad in here as well. So, you know, that tells you what the Nintendo Entertainment System, by the way, ads for Konami games such as Russian Attack, Castlevania, Top Gun, Double Dribble, and The Goonies 2, which was never a movie.
It was a good game, though.
The Goonies 2 video game is very good, actually.
Oh, yeah.
There's also a great ad in here I want to point out for the New Universe. Does anyone remember that piece of crap at Marvel's attempt?
Barely.
Okay, so basically the only character you're going to care about that came out of this, which is currently running around in the current Avengers story arc right now, is Starbrand. And Starbrand was killed by accident by Robbie Reyes, the current Dodge Charger Ghost Rider. And the Starbrand is now an infant baby.
All right.
And you were talking earlier about the Brood. The Avengers actually had to go out in space to find this baby. The baby's mother dies in childbirth, giving birth to the new Starbrand. And they also have to deal with a Brood-infected Thor.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Who's just like, I'm still worthy. I can still pick up the hammer. And he's got his giant Brood hands around Mjolnir. And he's like lifting it. And Captain America's like, right, Thor, you're still worthy. You're always still worthy. Good Brood, Thor. And Captain America is the only one left in the Quinjet with the Brood transforming Thor. And you're like, oh no, Steve. You know, Captain Marvel's left, She-Hulk is left, Iron Man's left. It's just Steve Rogers and a Brood-infected Thor.
That's not too good.
Great story, but that's where the Starbrand came from. We're so off topic, so Leo, you can edit this part out of the actual podcast. The live show is fine. We don't need to go into the Starbrand for a Spider-Man show. That's all the notes I have here for the Return of the Sin Eater before we get to the actual ongoing series proper, one issue at a time.
Okay, and so what are we covering next week?
We're going to cover the two-parter involving the return of the tarantula, but we're going to get into what that means when that happens. Captain America also makes an appearance, and we get into South American politics. So hang tight, people. We don't cover American politics on the show. We cover 1988 South American politics.
So this is gonna be...
I'm not even joking. That's very important to the tarantula character. He's a South American, like Colombian assassin kind of character.
So it's 137 and 138?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm just making
So we're going to do 137.
Oh, 137. Okay.
So everyone listening to the live show, come back for issue 137. You've listened to this on the podcast. The next issue will feature the return of the Tarantula. We'll go into who the Tarantula is real quick, what his first appearance is, and what happened to the original Tarantula, which in on itself is a great story. If you're currently playing the Miles Morales Spider-Man video game, the Roxxon Corporation is heavily involved with the what happened to the original Tarantula.
Oh, I love the Dorkening. Very popular.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
That's okay. You know that played at the beginning of the podcast link, that audio clip that you sent me?
Yeah.
It's cut off and the Dorkening is like, and then I had to edit the entire part out because it sounded so bad.
Yeah, so what I do is while the ad's playing, so I'm recording it a so I'm not sending you a digital copy. It's actually coming from the mixer, so you're getting a better copy of it. So that's when I stop the file and start the next file is when the ad's playing to make things a little bit easier for editing. But everybody,
one issue at a time of this will definitely make it a lot easier too. So I'm not sounding so manic trying to get through 3 issues at a time. You know, when we get to Inferno, it's another thing that's like a big multi-story park. So that's easy to, be much easier to break it down.
Sounds good. So Chris, where do you like people following you?
They can find me at Chris DSAV on Twitter. My other comic book show is Goth Girl Horror, the Hack Slash podcast. This week's new episode coming up, or if you're listening to this on the podcast, last week's brand new episode debuts this week, the 19th. It is Bomb Queen versus Hack Slash, and it is our most politically charged episode ever because Bomb Queen has several political satire comic books, so we get everything out there about how we feel about the inauguration, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and everything. So just warning everyone about that episode coming up. It's just because the comic book covers it, we bring it up.
Okay. And Rich?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Velvet Joker?
Yep. You can find me on Facebook as Rich Davis, or you can find me on Instagram, CTJoker2014.
Okay. And for me, just Google Leo Pond, find a bunch of stuff. Could be true, could be not. I'm not going to say which is which, but I run a little network called the Dorkening Podcast Network, which you can find this episode and a bunch of other stuff on there, including splash pages, the Dorkening, tons of shows, almost 30 shows right now. And with that, I want to thank everybody for watching and listening. We'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Peace out. Have a good evening.